Today, I'm happy to welcome Mike Troiano, partner at G20 Ventures. Mike, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sammy. Great to be here.
So, tell me about your company, G20 Ventures. What are you doing?
So the short version is we call ourselves human scale venture capital. And, we live in an era famously of billion-dollar venture funds. We really take a different view of what makes for success in venture. We think this is a business of personal relationships and personal commitments. And what we try to do is take a really active interest in a small number of companies. So in financial terms, we are a concentrated risk Series A fund. We look for companies that have early traction, specifically East Coast enterprise tech startups. And we help them scale their go-to-market models and be successful. And we do that with the help of more than 20 of the Northeast most accomplished entrepreneurs who are active members in our fund. Like
you are one.
Yeah, actually, I was not a partner in the first of our funds. I was actually a member, and then eventually they asked me to come on over to the dark side, which I did.
Very good. So what are you specifically doing at G20 Ventures?
My job is to find companies that are on the verge of success and help them succeed. I mean, which doesn't sound that difficult when you frame it in those terms. But in practical terms, what I really look for seed deals in seed stage startups that smart money is flowing into, and I reach out to founders to make a connection, and then work to build a relationship with them, typically by helping them tell their own stories more effectively. I find that not only helps them, but it gives me a chance to get to know who they are and what they're doing, and as a fund, it gives us pole position when they're ready to raise more money. Meaning that we'll typically get a first look at an investor presentation for the Series A round. After that, I got to get deals done, and then find ways to actively contribute to the success of the companies we invest in, and that's most often by helping them scale their go-to-market model.
I like what you're doing. Basically, it's what every good salesperson is doing: provide value up front before you even start selling anything, create a relationship, and then of course try to hook them.
Yeah, I'm Italian American, Italian ethnicity, and we say good friends knock with their feet, meaning when your friends come to visit you, a stranger knocks on the door and asks for something, but a friend shows up, they got a lasagna, a bottle of wine, they're holding flowers, their arms are full. You got to knock with your feet, and that idea of like where you want to knock with your feet. I think it's certainly our philosophy as a venture fund. And I think it's the philosophy of great sales and marketing people as well.
Yeah, absolutely can relate to that. I'm half Tunisian, so North Africa. It's pretty close, the culture in the sense. You always, if you visit someone, bring something. So I understand what you're saying here. Before becoming an investor, what did you do?
I really started my career as in the advertising business in New York. I was a brand strategist for Coca-Cola, GM, Kodak, AT&T, IBM, and really learned how to sell and how to make the complicated simple in that role at an agency. I went to business school in Boston and left to start my own agency and sold that, and learned that very important to have some technology in whatever you build so you get the right exit multiple. And that started me raising money and building technology so I could create more valuable companies. And I did that a bunch of times as either a founder or a member of the founding team. And then the last time I did it was at a company called Actifio, which is a data virtualization company based here in the US that was just acquired by Google.
Very good. Yeah, and I mean, you played on a little bit. I mean, it was acquired for over 1.2 billion. So that was a big exit.
I think that was our peak valuation. They have not disclosed the financial terms.
Okay, peak valuation then, yeah. But then it was probably over 1.2 billion, I assume, if you did a good job. And there you were the CMO.
I was the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, that's right. And I did a lot of other things. I mean, as you know, like in a startup, things change so fast that you're often called upon to play different roles in the life of a company. And I was there relatively early and left after that round at $1.2 billion. And the job evolved as the business did, and it was a really great experience with a bunch of great people. So can't ask for more than that.
And I came across one of your articles by chance on LinkedIn, and I really liked what you were writing. It was about how the role of marketing shifts. It was, I think, specifically about Activio. I mean, I don't want to sum it up. Maybe you can sum it up, the quintessence of this in a few sentences, because I thought the lesson was quite interesting. And that's how I came across like you and asked you to be on our podcast, because I think it's really interesting what you say.
I appreciate that, Sammy. Yeah, the piece was about, I think the headline was, don't get beat in the market you create. Yes. And what it was really about was, as a category creator, when you're creating a new category of enterprise technology, those companies, they typically have a kind of broad product, meaning they have a product that does lots of different things because you're not 100% sure where the sweet spot is when you begin. And they have very focused marketing because they're spending all their money on product development. It's hard to raise a lot of money when you don't have a proven space. And so you need to be very efficient. And what that means is all the marketing dollars go into very accountable, quantifiable forms of demand generation to support sales, as they rightly should. But as a category gets created, then it accumulates, what I called fast followers, meaning companies who raise a lot of money and try to get into the space to follow the leader. And at that point, the company that created that market needs to really change gears, because the companies that win there, they tend to have a more focused product, meaning the sweet spot of the market has revealed itself, and you need to really focus in on the value prop and use case for that kind of customer. And they tend to have broader marketing because now, competition to win an established market is really a contest of stories more than it is just a contest of products. And so you need to begin to expand and think more about the softer, more qualified kind of brand building aspect of marketing, as opposed to just the very quantifiable demand gen. So it's really about that shift, moving from a broad product and a narrow marketing strategy to a narrower product and a broader marketing approach. And it recounts my experience at Activio and at other companies, really calling on a set of our portfolio companies to focus their products and broaden their marketing.
Mm-hmm. It's super interesting. Also for late entrants, if you flip the story, not from the player who's already there, but someone who sees a niche and wants to enter a market, it's basically be super focused on the sweet spot. Once you nailed it, raise a lot of money and like capture a big share of the brand awareness space.
That's exactly right. That is the playbook for a lot of these West Coast firms, the fast follower firms. There's an expression here. People say, settlers get shot, pioneers get shot, settlers get land. Meaning that if you're the first people out there, then you're dealing with a lot of, challenges, and then later on, the sort of settlers come, and the towns are established, and it's a little less risky. And so that is definitely a strategy that we see in the venture space all the time.
Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears a little bit. What big shifts do you see in marketing nowadays?
It's a great question. I think that, the biggest shift is really an evolution in the way that we think about ad targeting and privacy. It's being led in Europe, but we're beginning to embrace that more enlightened philosophy in America. And I think that the result of that is you're going to see, much more focus on messaging or marketing programs that don't rely solely on, laser focused ad targeting, right? We've sort of wrung all the value out of, the targeting capabilities of these data-driven models at Facebook and elsewhere. And as that becomes more challenging, I think you're going to see refocusing on other aspects of communications effectiveness. For me, the most interesting of which is storytelling. That I think the quality of your messaging, the effect of your creative, becomes much more important in a world where hyper targeting is no longer possible because of the various data and privacy protections that are in place. And so my hope is that we're on the cusp of a creative renaissance in the way marketing undertakes its mission to drive sales.
Yeah, so it's basically a little bit going away from the growth hacking, super quantitative way of doing marketing, and more going into like the good old days. It almost sounds like it of marketing.
I think, I mean, from my perspective, that's certainly true. I had a young person ask me once if she was going to move into marketing, and she was asking if statistics was a good undergraduate major to go into marketing. And I just was like, God, how we have fallen. I remember a time when marketing really didn't have a lot of accountability. And to be clear, there were some things that were better and things that were worse in those days. I think for decades, marketing really didn't have a seat at the grown-up table, at the executive group, because, what's the old joke? Show me a sales guy, take away accountability, I'll show you a marketing guy. So I do think that marketing suffered from that lack of quantifiable accountability for a long time. But with the advent of digital marketing, and particularly inbound marketing and SEO, and marketing became more and more and more quantifiable, to the point where it seemed like math. Like you have a whole generation of marketers who have kind of grown up thinking marketing is about something that happens in Excel, and it's not. At the end of the day, you're trying to influence the behavior of actual human beings on the other side of that screen. And I think the more human dimensions of marketing, the storytelling in particular, are going to increasingly be important to separate programs that work from programs that don't.
So what makes a good story?
What makes a good story? Great question. I would say a good story is really three things. And those three things are, I'll call them relevant, simple, and emotional. So I think a good story from a business context really starts with the question, why? Why really connects you to something fundamental to the target, the people you're talking to. And you always want to build a story from the target back instead of from the product forward. And so leading with why, really being rooted in a value proposition for the customer, is absolutely fundamental to good stories. They all have that in common. Second is simplicity. It's very hard to get people's attention, and complexity is really the enemy of attention. It confuses us. It creates friction in the assimilation and spreading of a new idea. And so simplicity is absolutely the second criteria for a good story. And then the third one is that good stories are emotional. We are emotional beings. We are not merely rational beings, right? We're not irrational. Like, I don't think it's dangerous to assume irrationality on the part of your target audience, but nor are we merely rational, meaning emotion affects the way we make decisions and the actions we take on a daily basis. And, effective marketing people understand that, and they use it to their advantage. And so that's the way I think about good stories. They are relevant, simple, and emotional.
Yeah, especially also like the emotional part, because sometimes I think at least people who sell in B2B forget that they sell to people and think, well, it's all about numbers and facts. And I think people are moved by stories. It's, I mean, you see it even in small things. I mean, we are focused, for example, with my company on LinkedIn. And so we post a lot of content, and we also see what kind of content resonates. And it's most of the times exactly the type of content that has these three attributes. And especially the ones that go through the roof are the ones with some kind of a story that people can relate to.
100%.
So it's really interesting. Yeah.
It is what makes humans human. That is really what separated our subspecies, Homo sapiens, from the many subspecies that we coexisted with on this planet for millions of years. It was that we had the ability to think conceptually, to tell stories and share information in that way, in a way that multiplied our reach and enabled us to align our activities at a much greater scale than anything else in the natural world. And so this is an incredibly powerful biological imperative that we're all born with. And storytelling is absolutely the way you build brands and the way you drive business. I have no more fundamental belief than that one.
So I know that you wrote also a blog post, and we will basically link to all the content that we talk about in this session. So you can just check out the show notes, and you will have the link to the really good articles of Mike. But I know that you wrote a really good blog post about how to get to a good story for your company. So I don't want you to summarize everything in like a few sentences, but maybe can you give us, can you take us by the hand and with one example of how you could do that, so that, well, you tell a story that sticks with us, so to say.
Yeah, sure. It's hard to come up with a story from a blank piece of paper. And it's particularly hard to come up with a story that the whole team is really aligned on and can get behind, starting with that. And so what I've found works is a technique that I actually learned in my agency days and have brought over to my days as an entrepreneur and now as an investor, which is to try to break a positioning story down into its component parts. And I think of a positioning, which is really an articulation of customer value proposition, as having 6 components, ingredients, if you will. And the first is the target, right? Who am I talking to broadly? Not everyone in the target is going to be equally predisposed to whatever I'm selling. And so very often there is a segment, which is the second thing. And a segment of the target who's possessing of some kind of predisposing attribute that is that separates them from the rest of the target audience. Third component is the brand, meaning what's the name of the company. Fourth is category, meaning what is the universe of things that customers consider us a part of? How do they think about us and the people we compete with? They have a name for that. And wherever possible, you want to use that existing category to help customers understand, right? It's much faster to say to someone, you know, we're one of these that you already know, but we're special because of this, as opposed to trying to explain something that no one's ever heard of, right? It's just much more efficient. And so that is the fifth thing, is distinction. Within the category that we've just named, what is it that makes us special? And then having made a claim of being special, of this distinction, you need to provide the final thing, which is proof. So these 6 components, the way I build stories with entrepreneurs and with our portfolio companies is to say, okay, as a team, let's go through these 6 things. Who is our target? Within that target, who is our sweet spot segment? What's the name of our company? What is the category customers think of us as a part of? What makes us special in that category, or what is our distinction? And then what is proof that makes that claim credible to the customer? And if you kind of bring the team together to negotiate those 6 things independently, then you can kind of string them together and you create a kind of sentence that is sort of structured as, for target, who our segment, brand provides the category with distinction because of proof. Okay, and you can really articulate the value proposition of anything in that framework. And you mentioned an example. I'll use BMW, right? Just because it seems appropriate. So for BMW, it would be for drivers who value performance. BMW provides luxury vehicles that deliver joy through German engineering. Okay, and I'll break that down. So who are we talking to? Who's the target? Target is drivers. We're talking to everyone who drives a car. Which subset of drivers? For BMW, it's drivers who value automotive performance, right? My wife is a Lexus owner and loves her Lexus, and it never breaks and it's never in the shop, but I find it incredibly dull. I drive a BMW because I enjoy driving, and I really take, I don't mind changing out the tires in summer and things that people who don't value performance think is probably a little crazy. The brand is BMW. And what's the category? BMW makes luxury vehicles, right? They make vehicles that have things that are, that I don't need, but that I want, right? They are unnecessary, capabilities and features in that car that just make the driving experience more pleasurable. That's a luxury vehicle. In the category of luxury vehicles, what makes BMW unique? Well, how do you separate a BMW from a Mercedes or from a Lexus or even a Jaguar? BMW, would say, well, they deliver joy, the joy of driving, specifically to a driver who values performance. And that ability of the automobile to deliver joy affects everything about the way the product behaves, not just the advertising, but, in the BMW, I can change anything all within easy reach. In the Lexus, I have to, pull over and park if I want to change the destination on the navigation. BMW is just a much more responsive kind of machine. And then finally, what enables joy? Well, it's really German engineering. It's really a remarkable level of mechanical engineering and manufacturing quality that goes into the production of those vehicles, which is what makes them special. So, that's really the short version. For target or segment, brand provides the category with distinction because of proof that will normally get people to a place where then you can have a conversation about okay, how do I distill this down into something that's a little bit more of a clever turn of phrase, or bring it to life in a creative execution?
Yeah, and I mean, what I like about the example is that a car, which is, most people would have said, unemotional, is sold with emotions. So even this is sold with emotions. So I mean, if they can do it, you can very likely also sell whatever you do with a flavor of emotions. Yeah,
100%. And that really is, if you look, armed with this, which is their positioning statement, pretty much. If you look at their creative, like, how can you tell a BMW ad? It's infused with that sensibility, the joy of driving. It really is what makes them special. And it's interesting. They've had such success that particularly Jaguar, but also Mercedes, are trying to move in that direction with these more sporty executions. But Mercedes is really about signaling success to the world today on a brand level, and BMW is much more about the joy of driving.
And I know from our short interview before this podcast that it's not like you have a one-hit wonder. You go into a closed room with your team, you have a big workshop, you come out of it, and boom, you nailed it. It takes some trials and errors and like market feedback. Can you maybe comment on that?
Yeah, sure. I always like the analogy of a comedian. Creating, the first step is you want to create something like I just did in that brief example there, and you want to do that with the entire team in the room. They won't be with you on the landing if they're not with you on the takeoff. So having alignment and making sure that the team sees themselves and what they aspire to be inside that positioning is really important. And the only way you do that is by doing it together as a group. Once you've created something, now you have a hypothesis, a way to describe our value proposition, and you want to bring that out to the world to see how the world responds. And that's the analogy of the comedian. Steve Martin wrote a book called Born Standing Up, and he talks about his journey as a comedian, and he describes how he would, his first time on stage, he wrote 10 jokes, and he got on stage and he told them, and 2 of the jokes people loved. They were hilarious. 3 of the jokes were okay. 5 of the jokes bombed. And he said, okay. And he went back to the drawing room and he wrote 8 new jokes. And the next night he went on with the 2 jokes that worked, and he spaced them out, and then he tried the 8 new ones, and he had one more great one. And so he, being a comedian is really just doing that year after year, iterating your set to get to a place where, you have, an hour and a half, 90 minutes of information where every single one hits. And that's when you shoot the Netflix special, and then it looks like, my God, this guy, everything he says is funny. Well, that's not really the way he got there. He got there by through a process of iterative refinement, being a student of his audience response. And I really think that that's something that characterizes great marketers as well. The best marketers I know are not just people who can communicate their ideas effectively. They're people who will then pay very close attention to the way people respond to that communication to adjust it and make it more effective.
And I mean, I really like what you're saying, because that's exactly what we, for example, with our small company do for ourselves and for our customers. It's creating lots of good content that is relevant for the target group and then posting it on LinkedIn. One very important tip: don't post it through your company site. Nobody wants to connect to a company. You want to connect to people, so use your sales people or marketing people to do it. And like 1 out of 30 or 50 posts just nails it. It's just 10, 20 times more reach than all the others. You don't know beforehand which one it is. You really don't know, but once you have it, it's like finding gold, I always say. You found something very special, and that's what you can repurpose in whatever you want to do with it. You can use it in direct messaging for your sales team. You can create a webinar around it. You can do a lot of stuff around it. And that's well, a little bit mathematical, because you can directly look at the engagement rate on LinkedIn. But it also combines what you say, that you just have to go out there and iteratively try out the market.
100%. It's exactly the same in principle, and I do think that yeah, that's what makes it work. Is you know, most important skill in listening in sales is listening, they say, and I think the most important skill in marketing is the same. So
let's assume we iterated on our story for the company, and we found the perfect story now. So now we really know this is it. What does this, like, in which ways will or should the story impact my company then?
It should impact it in a lot of ways that go well beyond marketing. I think that, well, first of all, I'll say that creating a great story, the process of creation that I just described, or really any process that gets to a story that reflects the consensus of the executive team, that process itself will surface important strategic questions. You know, I have seen companies that were well past the seed stage of, you know, institutional venture capital argue, you know, intensely about some aspect of the target or some nature of the value prop, or, you know, positioning is an exercise in prioritization as much as it is in invention, right? At this stage, you're really trying to figure out what are the important things, and the only way to be simple is to lead with the most important, right? So the creation of a story, I would say, first does surface important strategic questions and help get your team on the same page. I think using a story consistently does make your marketing more effective, but it will also shape the priorities of your product, right? Once you really understand how your product experience in totality creates value for your customer, that will tend to shuffle things around in terms of roadmap and the way you think about the features and enhancements that you need to deploy. A great story will reduce friction in attracting capital. That's something that I and other investors are always very focused on. It will also attract talent in the same way. And then finally, customers. And then the process of kind of refining it once you have something that achieves those goals, that's really going to mark your progress as a startup from, you know, from what you think you're selling at the beginning to what the world actually wants to buy. And it is not unusual. In fact, it's the rule and not the exception that those two things are a little bit different. And so the process of being disciplined about the way you tell your story is really going to help you follow that journey in a way that's systematic and that encourages you to get to the destination.
Yeah, I like what you say about in how many ways a story will impact, like, of course, the product you create, because you then exactly know what you should leave out, especially, yeah. But also, I mean, you're selling to everybody out there, the stakeholders. You sell shares of your company to investors. You sell a good job to really good employees, and of course, you say you're always selling. And a good story helps with everything, because you're selling to humans in the end. So that's really nice. That if you nail that one, you can impact humans in general and use it for your company.
That's right. companies don't buy anything. People inside companies buy things. And that's true of employees and investors and everybody. You need to get excited about what you're doing in order for you to be successful.
So how long should I tell the story then? I mean, because I know for myself that I always have this little guy on my left side sitting there and saying, well, this is working fine, but what else could we do now? Is there something new, something fancy? You know, the whole excitement is in getting out there and try something new for me.
Yeah, well, you're a creative person, and creative people struggle with this, what I call shiny object syndrome. You know, for a story to take hold in the hearts and minds of the world takes real discipline. It takes real consistency, and it takes real perseverance. And so once you have a story, sustaining that for the duration required for it to take hold in the marketplace is a real challenge, particularly for people like you who are very creative and who enjoy that process of creation. But you know, I like to tell people, you know, when you're so sick of your story that you're going to vomit if you have to tell it again, most of the people you want to reach are just hearing it for the first time. You know, we all live in the sort of bubble of our own creation, like our own marketing messages, and you know, the real test of when a story has outlived its usefulness is when they're sick of it. And I promise you, if you just walk around a trade show floor or talk to some folks who are not customers, most of them probably haven't even heard of you at the point you're sick of telling the story. So very important to keep that in mind. And again, it is all of a theme, which is it's about the response of your audience. Like I promise you, you know, Bruce Springsteen is doing the show on Broadway, and he you know, there are variations, but he tells basically the same arc night after night after night after night. And you know, Bruce is probably sick of it, but boy, that audience, you know, it's all brand new for them every night. And he is, as an artist, you know, someone who's sung the same song every night for the last 40 years, like he understands that for it to become something that is an engine of value in the world and experience, you know, it means the creator of it has to stick with it well past what anyone creative might reasonably expect to do. So that is certainly a challenge. I have great empathy for you, but you gotta stick with it over time for it to work.
I try my best, and I like what you just said. A good story is an engine of value.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'll tweet that when we're done.
Very good. So let's switch gears again a little bit. I'm a sneaky one, so I'm going to steal a question, basically, that because in our peer interview, I usually ask one question. Which question would you ask 10, 20 of your peers? And you said, well, I usually ask a variation of this question. What's your favorite secret in driving leads that salespeople love? So I'm going to ask this question to you now, and I'm curious about your answer.
Yeah. So it's a question that I ask every marketing person I talk to, just because, you know, we're all students of this discipline and trying to learn. Mm-hmm. And someone gave me a fantastic answer, which I've since embraced repeatedly. And this is very tactical, but really effective. And the idea is that, you know, when you think about influencer marketing, very often a marketing person will think in terms of trying to get a universe of influencers to flog my white paper or whatever. But I produce a content asset, and then I bring it to a universe of influencers, and I ask them to promote it. And that very rarely is super successful. This other marketing leader, you know, proposed something very different, which is really incredibly effective in my experience of using the same technique, and that is build a relationship with influencers over time, and then approach them with content in draft form, and ask for their feedback before you're asking them to flog it and promote it. And when you do that, one of two things is going to happen. Either, and this is the rare case, they're going to say, "This is fantastic. I love it. Let me share it with my audience," in which case you win. Or they're going to say, "This is shit." And if they say this is shit, then you have the ability to say, you know, thanks for that. Thanks for letting me know. I really appreciate your honesty. How can I make it better? What would be better for your audience? What would be more valuable to them? And then they're going to give you like their thoughts on how something could be improved. And then, you know, in some cases there you can say, boy, I love these ideas. Would you be willing to help me with this? And I'd be happy to pay for your time in doing so. And so even if you're way off in your first version, this gives you an opportunity to engage an influencer, not only to get the benefit of their exposure for the finished deliverable, but to get the advent of their understanding of your audience and have that understanding inform the communication that you're producing on behalf of your company. And it's just a very effective way to plug into a community and get exposure for your brand. And it's something I've used frequently, and it's worked almost every time.
I love it. I'm going to use it for sure. And I can tell you a variation of what you just said. Well, that's what we basically do for us and for our customers as well, but it's pretty simple to try it out yourself. You do it with a podcast. You know, you invite these influencers to your podcast. I mean, you went through the process, so you can tell me if you like it, but I think a pre-interview, a short one, is helpful to tease out the contrarian thoughts where people are really emotional, because you want to capture something that, and you see it I see it in your face, you know, and how you tell the stories. I mean, it's something that you really care about. And then you let them talk about it and you ask them questions. And in the end, repurpose the long form format, like this video and the text that you can create out of it, and post it and make it available also to the influencer. And there are several things that happen then. On the one hand, and very important, last thing I forgot, usually invite your target group. Yeah, it should be an influencer, that could be a customer. So what happens? You build a really good relationship with a potential customer. You can sneak in some discovery questions in the pre-interview, so you find out if that person has a problem that you could solve. And you create really interesting content without having to like deep dive into the white paper space yourself. You know, it's pretty simple. And then later on, once you hit like 20, 30, 40 people that you interviewed, you can create a really good book. Ask and then use again your logic of, well, ask them for feedback about the chapter they're in. And then you have like 20, 30, 40 promoters of a whole book. So I can tell you, we are a really small company, growing, but small, and we are able to talk to people like you. That's amazing. Out of Munich, you know, and the world is getting smaller. And where are you situated?
I'm in Boston.
In Boston. So from Munich to Boston, you know, and it was like not even a week from my first outreach to you on LinkedIn to we sit here and have a conversation. And that's something I just love. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think you really nailed it right there. You know, that the idea is that the value isn't in the blog post or in the white paper or in the podcast. The value is in the creation of those things in a way that builds relationships and drives learning and the sharing of ideas. And I really do believe that. And I think if people, I wish people were a little more oriented to that. If they were a little bit more oriented to, again, the human dimension of it and the process of relationship building, as opposed to the SEO optimization of every nugget of you know, content that you put out there. I think that's exactly the right mindset.
And I remember something that you wrote, for most B2B companies, there's a really finite space of potential customers that you want to influence. It's not like a Coca-Cola where you have to influence billions of people. It's like a really finite space. I think you said like 10 to 30,000. I mean, for the customers we serve, we usually see like sometimes even as small as 2,000 people that you want to influence. But if you get them, you captured your market. And so it's not a matter of, oh, it's too big. It's a matter of you have to get started and take it bite by bite. And it's absolutely attainable and manageable also for smaller companies.
100%, 100%. I really do believe that for most B2B categories, if you can get, you know, 10 to 20,000 people in the whole world to understand and be excited about what you're doing, you have the ability to take the market. And that's really incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. So last set of questions before we come to our 5 rapid fire questions. It's a usual struggle between And you were wearing the hat of CEO, and you were wearing the hat of CMO. Did you also wear the hat of Chief Sales Officer at some point?
I have never run sales without marketing. So,
Okay, but then both together, so
I
to
have
say.
I have run both. Yeah.
So you know of the endless struggle of sales and marketing, and we know that what marketing says about sales and sales says about marketing. So my core question is, how can you how if you are a company leader, how can you get marketing and sales work as a go-to-market team together and drive value for the whole company?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things that you can do. The first thing I would say is that it comes down to personal relationships. If your marketing people think your salespeople are assholes, and your salespeople think your marketing people are useless artists, you will never be successful. And that perception, assuming you've done a good job hiring those two departments, and most people have, like, that's not an accurate perception on the part of either group. And so you got to get them together. You got to find ways to build those relationships. If you're a marketing person, you should spend time out in the field. You should get out there and, like, spend a few days with each of the sales guys in your key regions, just in the car with them, or driving around, or going to meetings, and get a feel for them as people. Get a sense of what it's like to have a number that you need to make to pay your family, or to feed your family, and what customers are really like in a world that you don't control, right? Marketing people, we just sit down, and as long as we got the checkbook handy, we can make anybody listen to us, right? Sales is much more messy. You're out there with a whole bunch of variables beyond your control, and having empathy for that as a marketing person is really key. And I would say the same for sales. Like, marketing is hard, and giving them a sense of the different priorities that you're wrestling with and trying to make things happen, I think, is important. So that has to exist between marketing and salespeople as people before it exists between them as functional representatives. I'm a big believer in that. Mm-hmm. Second is the way you think about defining goals, right? You famously, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so there has been a revolution in the nature of accountability for marketing. And in a way, like, I'm very comfortable with the idea of the MQL, the marketing qualified lead, because it does create, marketing people who just, they think that's success, right? I'm just going to manufacture these MQLs and throw them over the wall at the salespeople, right? And then complain when they don't follow up. And that is a dynamic at play in a lot of B2B companies. I've seen it. I'm sure you have as well. So I think, metrics that align marketing and sales in the go-to-market effort, right? To say that, look, I'm not marketing, you're not sales, and we're going to optimize those things independently. Together, we are the go-to-market team. And how do we bring this product to market in a way that really drives growth in the company? And I'll give you a metric that tends to encourage that, which is go-to-market productivity. So go-to-market productivity is a ratio that is, what is my total amount of new sales, or if I'm a SaaS company, ARR growth that happens in a quarter, and that divided by what is my total sales and marketing spend combined, right? And marketing's role is essentially to grow that number, right? That every dollar I spend on salespeople, I'm getting more leverage, right? That's why I build brand. That's why sales enablement matters. That's why efficient demand gen enables productivity. And so as the marketing person, I want to drive go-to-market productivity, meaning that every dollar I invest in marketing is a dollar I didn't invest in sales, right? So the standard is always, how do I do things that make sales more productive? How do I think about what we're doing together? And what I've found using this way of measuring things in lots of different roles over the years is that companies go through a kind of similar arc. Like, in the beginning, you're probably spending more on sales and marketing than you're generating in revenue, right? And so there's a milestone when a startup gets to 1, meaning I'm spending the same that I'm generating in a given time period, a quarter or a month or whatever. And companies usually get to profitability somewhere between 2.5 and 3. So when I'm generating revenue that is 2.5 to 3 times the amount of sales and marketing spend I have in a given period, usually I'm within, within spitting distance of cash flow break even. And so thinking about that arc and working together to climb that productivity arc, I think is another important tool in trying to get sales and marketing on the same page.
Yeah, love it. And it's, I never heard this metric before, I must say. It makes sense, yeah. It combines both. And it's one thing that you both can look at well, have to be both, I mean, marketing and sales have to be aligned on. I can tell you what we did at the beginning, and it was really helpful. I basically forced our CTO to also sell. And he's not a seller, but he managed to sell a few contracts, so it was possible with our go-to-market motion. But it helped a lot because he now understood what he has to build, because we are building basically a software as a service product. Right now it's almost finished so that we can use it for our first beta users outside. But I thought he has to understand what troubles someone has to go through with our, right now it's all Google Sheets and everything, and what a good like software would be in the market. So you can even apply it a little bit further than just marketing and sales.
Yeah. A WeWork cubicle is a dangerous place from which to view the world. Getting out there, talking to customers, mixing it up. Like I bet that had a huge influence on his priorities from a roadmap standpoint as well. And there's just no substitute for customer contact. It's critically important that you corrupt your vision with what customers actually want.
Absolutely. So now we are coming to our 5 rapid fire questions. Mike, are you ready?
Yeah, fire at will.
Whoa. What do you do to keep body and mind fit and sharp?
I would say time in nature. I am, I'm getting on in years, or I'm over 50 now. So I think it's really more about your level of activity as opposed to your level of intensity. And so for me, every day, a walk in the woods, a bike ride, time on the water in the summer, time in the mountains in winter, those things are really key to me for both mind and body.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm from a mountain region, and that's something I love every day.
Yeah.
Is there a business book that you love?
Ogilvy on Advertising. It's such a fantastic book about advertising and about sales and about the nature of marketing. It has shaped the way I think about the discipline so much. I had fortunately, I was able to meet David in his later years, and it was a real thrill for me to do that. That book has really had a huge influence on me my whole career.
Mm-hmm. And we'll put it into the show notes as well. Is there a favorite business leader that you follow?
I am a student of Steve Jobs' product and brand leadership. I think he was really wanting as a manager and frankly as a human being, but I've read almost everything he's written and his biography, and I really think there's a lot to be gleaned from that. These days I follow a guy named Scott Galloway, who was a professor at NYU. I follow him pretty religiously. I think he's just a really insightful strategic thinker and is very comfortable in the role of contrarian, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Who should be our next podcast guest and why?
Scott Galloway. Steve Jobs is dead.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna try it. Perfect. And now you can directly address our audience. Anything that we can help you with?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I mean, we're a venture fund, so please keep an eye out for enterprise technology companies that are getting early traction. We tend to focus on the Eastern United States. So I know your audience is a little bit more geographically dispersed, but that's what we're looking for. And beyond that, really just, help. There's a set of ideas that I think are core to our worldview and our business, and help us spread those ideas, build awareness of G20 Ventures and of what we're trying to do that's unique.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Where can people get in touch with you best?
I love Twitter. I'm a Twitter, I'm an early adopter and a big fan. So I'm Mike Trap on Twitter. Please follow me there. All my writing is on Medium at miketrap.com. And then I've been running my own podcast on the Racket platform, and you can get me there at racket.com/MikeTrap.
Awesome. It was a real pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you so much, Mike.
The pleasure was mine, Sammy. Thanks for the time, and thanks to the audience for listening.